It's game day, Texan fans, so let's deep dive into how Houston can come out this game victorious. Making the adjustments, being in the right spots, and avoiding shooting themselves in the foot is all crucial for a Texans win and avoiding the 0-2 start.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, from H-Town to your town. Today's episode and every episode of the Locked On Texan podcast is for Texans fans all around. Shout out to my everydayers from the Himalayas. Thank you for making this show your first listen of the day, for constantly coming back to listen to myself, your Texas Credential Media member, football analyst, also heard on ESPN Southwest Radio right here in Houston, KHOU, Channel 11, John Hickman. I'm super excited to dive into today's episode. I want to shout out to the first-time listeners and viewers. Make sure you subscribe or wherever you listen to your podcast. But this show is all about the Texans versus Bucs deep dive and what are the ramifications of last week's loss, how they can improve and hopefully avoid the 0-2 start, which is what I will end the show off with. For the secondary, it's kind of like this Army slogan: be all you can be, secondary, be the secondary you claim to be. And for the offensive side of the ball, what are the must-dos for the offense? CJ Stroud, Nick Caley coming into this week after the word that was used, lollygagging. There are certain things that we saw in week one that we should not see in week two against the Bucs. Now, a couple of need-to-knows. No Tristan Wirfs or Chris Godwin for Tampa. In this game, Houston may actually have a chance to see former Texas legend Charlie Heck out there at right tackle for the Bucs because of starting right tackle Luke Goedeke is questionable for that game. Now, that's a matchup that would favor the Houston Texans a lot. But beating the Bucs pressure from preparation and inside the numbers, I think that's where I want to start for this game. When I look at how Houston can win this game, the first step is obviously, improving on their own mistakes. No team wins games with their biggest op in front of them being themselves, right? That means offensively they cannot, for the team altogether, they cannot have 11 penalties. Offensively, they cannot have a theme of trying to make it out of second and third and long situations throughout the entire game. That's just not going to help them. The Houston offense has to operate with urgency and cannot, say it with me, lollygag. It cannot afford that, right? Tall Balls defense, they blitzed on 28% of the Michael Penix quarterback dropbacks and created 17 pressures week one and gave Penix Jr. only 2.65 seconds to throw on 47 dropbacks, right? So the pressure is going to be on. And for Houston, what's underrated that a few of us has talked about in the Texans media here in Houston or, around the nation, but the word lollygagging was so important because that hinders making whatever checks that needs to be made at the line of scrimmage with the right amount of time to make it. So that's why they can't lollygag, because that defense is going to dial up that pressure. Tall Balls looks is something that throws off veteran quarterbacks that has had time in the league. So imagine how difficult it is to beat that look with a first-year offensive coordinator and a third-year quarterback on his second offensive coordinator. That's going to be extremely difficult. So what is the key for Houston on the offensive side of the ball? Right, that's the question. How can they counter the successful defensive strategies employed by the Buccaneers? It's important to note that Tampa utilized a lot of cover three defense. Out of 71 defensive snaps, they played cover three on 29 of those snaps, making it the most frequently used coverage for Tampa in week one. The second most used coverage, cover one. Texas offense versus cover three and cover one in week one, what stood out? Those were the most successful runs for the offense. 52 rushing yards versus cover three, 30 rushing yards versus cover one, including 7.5 yards per carry. Let's go back to Demeco Ryans on Texans radio this week, how he mentioned, got to make sure that we give Nick Chubb a little bit more. And I think that will be a part of the game plan. And for Houston, what will help with that, he only had 13 carries in week one, but What will help with that is just staying above the sticks, staying in front of the sticks. When it comes to delivering for the passing offense, CJ Stroud has to play the low to high instead of the other way around, right? And I think when I look at the pressure that will be there for my everydayers, you guys have heard me talk a lot about Ryans being the ultimate reference to what the looks and the fronts will look like. And I am sure the defense simulated a game plan to help Houston's offense be able to combat that pressure. Here's what, based on the weaknesses of the Bucs defense, Houston should exploit: the middle of the field, inside the hashes. Houston's offense must win inside the numbers to keep drives alive. And I think that is the overall goal for the Texans. Don't play behind the sticks, of course. Do everything to keep moving forward after an abysmal week one. This is why I say CJ must keep his eyes flowing low to high this week and really moving the ball forward. CJ wants those explosive plays, right? And I get it. When you look at maybe his best attribute from his rookie year, it was his downfield success that took a dip last year due to the pressure the offensive line caused, not having a lot of time, and also some of the offensive concepts where at times a lot of long, drawn-out routes from the play call. So what I want to see differently, and I talked about this on the show that went out Saturday, just the amount of times that I saw similarities to last year's offense to this year's offense and how maybe that was on purpose. So Nick Caley and CJ Stroud can get on the same page in terms of comfortability. And then also the fact that a lot of those routes that were being ran that was a little bit long and drawn out was due to the fact that they were second and long, third and long situations. But we know that CJ wants those explosive plays, and those might not always be there just outright. And when he has to keep away from doing is holding the ball too long, as we've seen, that creates sacks for himself at times. So flowing low to high eye-wise is important. But also, that's just not on CJ Stroud. For Nick Caley, again, that has to be the game plan for your offensive coordinator. I understand you're going to your second game in your first year, but this is why you have Demeco Ryans, as a reference. When the pressure is on or when the looks are showing that we know it's coming, schematically, they have to be prepared to beat those looks and that pressure. Plus, when we talk about what opposing teams finding the weakness in Houston's offense, like when we talk about opposing teams, offenses find the weak link for Houston's defense. And we know it's coming. And we see opposing offenses attack the target. Houston's offense for the past 2 years, I don't think has done a consistent job of recognizing and reacting to the weak link of a defense and going at that weak link. Like for Houston, and I hate to say this, but if you're in a third down passing situation, then they're going at the slot, whoever's in the slot, specifically Jalen Petrie. It doesn't feel like the Houston Texans offense has game plan to attack weaknesses. So for this week, if I'm deep diving into where I think Houston can win, Sirvocea Dennis is that team's version of Jalen Petrie at the linebacker spot. Allowed 116 yards in week 102 of that was from yak yards, plus a couple of missed tackles. He was snatched from the game at one point during the game. Overall, the Bucs defense allowed 149 passing yards in the middle of the field. 204 yards of that, overall, 204 yards overall were underneath when I look at yards from 0 to 9 from the line of scrimmage. 9 yards from the line of scrimmage. The game plan for Houston must be killing the Bucs' weakness, plus being a more disciplined team. Now, for the defense, it's about being better in areas where they were expected to be coming into the season. What does that look like? More Locked On Texans on the other side. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can pay off big. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right means cashing in. With football back, PrizePicks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you can turn your hot takes into real prizes, all in less than 60 seconds. It's quick, easy, and honestly my favorite way to follow along with football, right? And I love checking out projections like Josh Allen more or less than 270 passing yards, or Saquon Barkley more or less than one rushing touchdown. Thank you, PrizePicks. I picked up some cash on that. Right. This week's max discount include Travis Kelce, more or less over 0.5 receiving yards. Will he get to that? Well, we will find out. Download the PrizePick app today and use code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code Locked On NFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks is good to be right. Houston is expected to get Ed Ingram back on the field at right guard, and we'll shift Howard and Ersery back to where they have been during the preseason. I am excited about that for Houston, and I think we're closer to seeing the wholeness of this offense and what it'll look like. I am really looking forward to seeing Christian Kirk and Berrios back out there. Texan fans, that is, I think, in some ways, good news. Howard back at right tackle, Ersery at left tackle, Ingram in at guard. They're going to put in Jared Patterson, who they call Slime, by the way. That's kind of funny finding out Jared Patterson's nickname is Slime, but he's going to be starting at center due to Andrews being out, Thomason being left guard, and we'll see the unit that, aside from Andrews, Jared Patterson is, he's been a somewhat of a vet in this league. He's been in the league for a couple of seasons now. He will be able to step in and be ready to go. But Bucs offense has some similarity to Houston when you consider Josh Grizzard has, years of experience as a passing game coordinator, but this is his first year as a play caller. Shout out to Baker Mayfield. Found a home in Tampa and has become a lead man. Everything on that offensive side of the ball runs through him, former Heisman quarterback. For the Texans defense, the guys up front will do their thing. I don't think we have a worry about that. They'll cause pressure. However, personally, I need to see Danielle Hunter have a greater impact on the game, but I think the front seven will bring the same great job they did in the Rams game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Of course, they need to clean up on those penalties. 4 of the 11 penalties from week 1 was on the defense. 3 of those 4 were on the front 7. So, when we talk about cleaning up on things and being a more disciplined team under Demeco Ryans, who came out and said, hey, listen, man, sometimes penalties are expected depending on the type of penalty is where it gets frustrating. Henry Tortoya had a penalty for was it the late hit? Not late hit, it was a unnecessary roughness call. And I think those type of hits or those type of penalties may be a little bit more understandable than the false starts, the encroachments, the bad use of hands. So they got to clean up some things, but overall, the front 7, I have confidence. For the Texans defense, it's all about being better in the secondary. And I think that's fair to say. The Texans secondary allowed 18 of their 20 targets for 235 yards. Now, granted, Stingley got hurt extremely early in the game, and I think that affected his impact. But why was the rest of the secondary having a hard time? And how can they be better, right? Being better, what does that look like? Well, having better eyes and being in their spots to disrupt plays downfield, I think that's priority number 1. Like, the undisciplinedness the Texans experience against the Rams were not just penalties. Kalen Bullock and Kamari Lassiter, you guys got to get yourself together. But Kalen Bullock, in the summer, you said y'all have the best secondary in the league. It's time to bounce back from week 1 and prove it. And he has to be better. It ain't all about interceptions, and that does matter, right? You want this team to kind of replicate the success they had in 2024 when they were able to take the ball away at a high rate and then take away no interceptions in week 1, right? So you want to see them get to a groove and get a pick here or a pick there, a couple of picks in out the game defensively. But being where you need to be matters just as much. Being on the same page in terms of communication on high-low coverage assignments, what I thought was impressive for Houston, and I'm going to give them a lot of credit here, it's not a lot of yak allowed. There wasn't a lot of yak yards allowed against the Rams. With modern offenses, you see play callers try to create confusion between the numbers at the second level to get those linebackers and maybe a down safety out of position all the time and get runners free space to operate underneath. So kudos to Houston there, which leads me to say for Houston, be at your spot, right? Be at your spot, play smart, communicate, and create some forced incompletions. 18 of 20 targets. That was the number. 18 of their 20 targets were caught for the secondary. No forced incompletions, no interceptions. Um, a lot of those guys, a few of those guys, like Kamari Lassiter, every target was caught in his direction. Cannon Bullock, PFF accounted him for one target, one completion. Um, CJ Gardner Johnson, I believe that he allowed all four of his targets according to PFF. That's just you see those numbers, and then you take those numbers and you look at the film. That's inexcusable for a secondary that coming into the season in the offseason said, "Hey, listen, we're going to have the best secondary in the league, and it's about being better with your angles, right? Reading the play quicker and getting to where you need to be, processing it a lot faster. Like these things matter, and of course, like I mentioned, communicating that matters as well. And they got to get their hands around the ball and create some force incompletions. Now, obviously, game planning for Emeka is a big task and ask for Houston. Again, teams around the league, when they match up against the Houston Texans defense offensively, they know that they have the edge in the slot, especially if you have a playmaker that you can put in the slot and operate and be dangerous. It will be interesting to see how Demeco diverts from his tendencies and how he will go about not allowing that Achilles heel being a reason why Houston's defense gets exploited for explosive plays. I thought the Texans defense did some really good things against the Rams. Like I said, man, the front seven played well. They didn't allow any explosive running plays. When you look at explosive running plays, 10 or more yards. Didn't allow that. I thought that they played Devontae Adams very well. Only 50 yards on the game, and that's pretty good, depending on what version of Devontae you're getting. But that's a good day for your defense. It was those explosive plays allowed down the field to Puka Nacua from the slot. That's a problem, right? And if Demeco does it, and if we see that hurting Houston and influencing the outcome, the overall outcome of the game, Demeco should be held accountable. He's a great defensive coordinator. He's a very intelligent coach. I know that is something he is looking at. Like, I gotta find a way to get better. Do we see Miles Bryant called up from the practice squad before the game, or do they maybe look to disguise some things for Jalen Petrie to not have him in some of those obvious passing down situations where he can be exploited? It's interesting to see how Demeco Ryans and Matt Burke will go about that. What makes this game so important for Houston, and I'm sorry, guys, I'm dealing with a cold, but what makes this game so important for Houston is, hey, man, Colts are up 2-0 in the division right now after winning a nail-biter, a clincher against Denver. It came down literally to the wire, and the football guys blessed the Colts. It's a must-win game for Houston, no doubt about it. Let's not sugarcoat it. Let's not BS it. This is a must-win game for Houston, and it will be frustrating to see this team lose because of their own merit. Making the adjustments, playing with tempo, limiting penalties, and feeding Nico to get the offense going is important. So, to close out the show, what does going down 0-2 mean for Houston? More on the other side of the Locked On Texans podcast. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. We all turn to some funny places for advice. Your barista, maybe. Your barber. I know I turn to my barber at time for advice. Maybe even a stranger in the bathroom. Not my thing, but for some people it is. But not everyone is the right one when it comes to getting real support. That's why BetterHelp is here. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 10 years of experience, BetterHelp helps you find your right match. Someone clinically trained and credentialed to guide you through life's challenges. I've caught myself venting to my group chat and oversharing with friends who mean well, but they are not therapists. Having someone trained to help me work through tough situations has made all of the differences. It's also flexible. You can join sessions online from home or on the go, which makes therapy fit into your busy schedule. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Find the right one with BetterHelp. Our listeners get a 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/locked on. That's betterhelp.com/locked on. Visit today, guys. It's a game changer, and you will experience the benefits. Also, when it comes to experiencing benefits of our everyday lives, I got a question for you, Texas fans. Are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the Upside app now. Use my limited time promo code touchdown for a limited time 25 cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code touchdown. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. Before closing out, guys, this is something that I think is important to say. We talk a lot about offensive coordinators, offensive line, and we try to create this perfect world for quarterbacks, right? And I think this is universally throughout college football and in the pros, right? We're kind of getting away from some of the asking of what we used to ask of old quarterbacks, right? So I think for CJ Stroud, man, one thing I want to see for Stroud is when that window of opportunity is there, take the throw. Live with it. Live and die with it. Dog it. Like, this ain't a game of perfection. There's only one team. There's only one team that ended the season perfect with the Super Bowl championship. There's only one team that ended the season. Only two teams ended the regular season undefeated. This is not a game where you can really try to hang your hat on being perfect. Interceptions will come. Live with them, right? But there were some moments where, and this is dated back to especially the second half of last season and a couple of moments against the Rams where I thought CJ, who has the arm talent and strength to make these throws, can make the throw. Make the throw, CJ. Make the throw, take the throw, live with the decision. If it's a throw that makes sense. Now, I'm not asking CJ to go out there and just not make throws that make sense, right? Like to make throws that don't make sense. Make the throw that makes sense. And if it's an interception because of a great play on the defender, we can live with those things. I want to see CJ Stroud get to a place where he's feeling himself again. And sometimes you got to live a little reckless on the wild side to get back to that spot. That's just my opinion. But for Houston, they definitely want to avoid the 0-2 start. Indy looks like a really good team. A really good team. They kind of get into division play next week. They take on the Jags, who the Jags look like an improved team. Still questions there for quarterback over there. Trevor Lawrence, right? Brian Thomas Jr. looks a little scared, like he's having a sophomore slump. Maybe too early to say, but he ain't looking like BTJ of his rookie year. But for Houston, like they have a tough schedule. They have a very tough schedule to actually kick off. I think the year off with the toughest two games than any other team in the league. The Rams going from the Rams to the Buccaneers, two playoff teams back to back. You look what the Rams were able to do offensively when they got it going last year. The Bucs were the number 2 offense in the NFL. Granted, both teams were dealing with some sort of injuries going into this game that will be without stud left tackle Tristan Wirfs. But the game for Houston means a lot in so many different ways. Again, like I'm big on my everydayers have heard me say this. I'm big on changing the perspective. My everydayers have heard me say this, what I'm about to say, but I think that this is a B tier team. They have to change their perception for themselves. And I think a Monday night game at home, white out, right? Fans, please get there against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who is a very good team. They ain't no slouches over there. They had a gutsy win last week. They have a gutsy quarterback who was willing to make every throw, who was very underrated in terms of how he uses his legs, and he's tough. Bouncing back from the way that they lost, not scoring any touchdowns, and being able to go out there and put on a good performance and win the game is important to kind of change the perception, not only from externally, but also internally for themselves. And that will help just avoiding starting 0-2. Like, I don't think nobody had this team starting 0-2. If you did, maybe both the games that Houston opened up with, LA and Tampa Bay, maybe those are games that you may have viewed as flip games where it can go either way. And I completely understand that. For the Houston Texans, it is, listen, this coach team, they look healthy. Daniel Jones looks in command of the offense. Taylor is playing great football right now. I know we're only 2 weeks in, but he's playing some damn good football right now from the running back position. The receivers are doing what they need to do. Nothing necessarily too exciting, but they're moving the chains. They're making plays. Ty Warren looks to be what he needs to be, right? And the defense is playing well. The biggest thing that they want to avoid when it comes to, avoiding the 0-2 start is, I don't know if they have enough to kind of climb out of that. It's going to be a long season, right? But again, Houston has one of the toughest schedules in the NFL. They open up week 1 against the Rams, week 2 against the Bucks. Then they go Jags, Tennessee. Right now, the Jags are 1-1, Tennessee 0-2, right? So those are 2 games to get them back into the good graces in terms of the division. Then they go Baltimore. Then they go Seattle. Then they go 49ers. Then they go Broncos, is a good team, right? Then they go back to Jaguars and Tennessee. Still hadn't met the coach yet. Then they go Buffalo. Then they get to the Colts. Then they go Kansas City. Then they go Cardinals, who's 2-0. Then they go Raiders. Then they got Chargers, a rematch. They have an extremely tough schedule. And they're going to have to win the games that they're supposed to win, but they're also going to have to prove that some of those games that may have been, one way or the other, like the first 2 games of the season, they got to pull out some of those games. They have to win some of those games because as they get deeper into the schedule throughout the year, especially considering, okay, how long Kirk is going to be out, how long Berrios is going to be out, can the secondary improve, right? Can everybody stay healthy as long as possible? Will the depth be able to be suffice when needed and called upon? Certain games they got to win early on to give themselves a cushion. And going down 0-2, I don't think that there's enough games throughout the year, aside from the division games that are not the Colts, based on the first 2-week projections and how they look. There's not enough games where they can have cushions to create it unless they go take them in terms of being able to bounce back from a loss and still have a command on the division. Right. Last year they started the year, I was at 5-2 and ended off with a poor record. They were not the same. They can't do it again. Not if the Colts keep playing like how they played. Thank y'all for watching today's episode and listening to today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. We got a game, ladies and gentlemen, Monday night. NRG Stadium. So that means you need to bring the NRG, bring the energy, be in your seats, support your Texans. Until next time, ladies and gents, the Texan fans across the nation, peace.